Hey everyone, welcome into the Irish NFL show. It's April, it's draft month. We are live on the 28th of April for Draft Night Live. Let's see who can stay awake the longest. Looking forward to that. Hard to believe, boys, we're 4 weeks out from the NFL draft. We're presented by Trust Gaming, Mini Arcade Systems, and also the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Loads of people asking us on Twitter over the last few weeks why the tickets are going on sale. They're on sale at the end of this month, the day after the first round of the draft. You can get more information on April 29th, collegefootballireland.com. Check our socials for any pre-sales or links that are going to go up at some point over the next few weeks. Looking forward to it, lads, under 150 days to that game. And talking about kicking off, talking about football, delighted to be joined by the lads, as always, Colin Cronin, Brown O'Leary, Mark Cockerell, back from his long holiday. Lads, Colin, how's the form? Good?
Good, yeah. It's our friend Paul Paps put up a tweet earlier in the week where he chronicled what has happened just in the last month alone, and he talked about how 1 month ago, you had basically Russell Wilson was a Seahawk, and the next person we're going to talk to was the head coach, and Tom Brady had still retired. It's worth looking. He had to go through 3 tweets in order to encompass everything that has happened in the month. We talk a lot about the new normal. I'm wondering, is this the new normal for an NFL offseason from here on in?
Never mind the free agency period. It's over. It's draft season.
Brian, I'm going to make a bold prediction to you. I think it dies now. I think that's it. I think what Colin just, I think that's it. I'm going to be the boring person to go. It's all happened. It's all over the draft. I'm only joking.
I think you're kind of right. I think what will happen now is everybody will focus on the draft, and whatever player gets their deal will probably like to get it after the draft when teams don't get what they want on the night. But I can't wait for draft night. I love it every year. Last year's one was really good, 5-hour show. Delighted we're doing it again. I won't be able to make Colin squirm at the 9th pick this year, unfortunately, because he's given that away. But I still look, it's always a very entertaining night, and I really can't wait for it.
And Mark, we're doing the draft live from your house behind that background. Good to have you back in the show again, Mark. It's been a while. I think, 4 months to this weekend since we've talked about the Patriots. Looking forward to hearing what they've been up to in the free agency market on the offensive side of the ball. How are you?
The Patriots were still involved in football in January, Michael, but they've been quieter in free agency, obviously.
Everybody was. That's the point.
Everybody was. I've been on the show. I had a few barbs about Russell Wilson already. It's good. I can't wait. I can't wait for the season to kick off. But actually, I mean, Brian just saying it's draft season. Look, again, we know the NFL is the behemoth in the room, but look at the entirety of the American media landscape right now. September to February is wall to wall with NFL. March is now just taken over by NFL free agency, and April is taken over by the NFL draft, the build-up, the actual awareness of it in relation to it. August is going to be all about preseason, so what they've got left to conquer? May, June, and July? I think they'll find a way to do that at some point, or maybe we'll just get a bit of a break at some point. It's been absolutely bizarre. It has been an episode of Madden. You're playing Madden and making your dream teams across the board. The Dolphins are trying to anyway. Obviously your Broncos have been trying to. It's just been great crack. And it's still been continuing this week. So, never ends, Michael.
I remember sitting in LA in February joking I'm going to chill for the next 6 weeks, and I haven't chilled yet. So I'm hoping to chill on the 1st of May at some point. Great couple of months, great few weeks in the NFL. I want to publicly, just on behalf of all of us, thank the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for deciding to forego time difference and announce that Bruce Arians was retiring or moving into a senior role in the organization. Todd Bowles takes over as head coach, 5-year deal, new deal for him. Tampa Bay have their long-term man. Colin, was this in the plan for their quarterback who came back from retirement?
I assume this was been a bit like the same way it was in the plan when Rodgers signed the contract in Green Bay. The quarterback, I'm sure, was aware of it. How much say he had in it. Who knows? There's all sorts of speculation, obviously, on Twitter. Did he come along to have a front row seat because he took a front row seat at the press conference? Was that to ensure that it actually happened? He wanted to see, given his own, Tom likes asterisks besides everything. He had it with his own retirement. Maybe he wanted to ensure that wasn't there with BA as the head coach. The most important thing, I think, is what BA has done for the game. BA has done more in terms of ensuring that people get opportunities that they deserve, where it doesn't matter the color of their skin, it doesn't matter their gender. He has been a driving force in terms of giving people opportunities wherever he has been, and kudos to him. And he has done a lot more than many of the multi-billionaire owners. So that is a legacy that he will take with him, and it's good to see him get a ring before he heads off into the sunset. Todd Bowles, deserving of a chance, guy who did really well with the Jets, and intrigued to see, I suppose, what he will do as head coach the second time around. There are a number of those in the league now. Josh McDaniels with the Raiders, and now we get to see Bowles. But you do, I suppose, there will be the intrigue around the input of Thomas Edward Brady and how it plays out. But look, the Bucks, they'll have to beat themselves in order to lose out on that divisional crown. So it should be, he'll have plenty of time to find his feet, I think.
Brian, is this whole situation with Tampa Bay like PSG playing in Liga at the minute? It doesn't really matter who's in charge, or what's your thought?
I'm not sure on that. I do think Todd Bowles deserves another opportunity to be a head coach in the league. And the first year with the Jets, he was 10-6, and that's all forgotten because of the second year was so bad. But bear in mind, Hackenberg was given to him as a second-round pick in the next draft by McCagnon, so he was on a hiding to nothing as the head coach then. I think he, similar to what Josh McDaniels has done with the Raiders, it looks like he's learned because he's gone very aggressive in terms of instead of blowing things up. So I think he's got a great team here, and like what was said today was he's handing over a great team. I do find it unusual how this has come about. I do agree with Colin. I mean, BA is deserving of all the accolades he got today at the press conference. One of the most diverse head coaches in the league. But only 3 weeks ago, I was watching him on NFL Network at the Combine, and he was really aggressive in terms of the manner of putting the team together for next season. Bad business sense. When it was quoted about Tom Brady coming back and being traded, he looked like he was very keen to be head coach this year. So I found it a little bit surprising that the timing of it, bearing in mind we've just gone past free agents, that he's moved on. So, but for the Bucks, we discussed on previous shows. I mean, realistically, there's only 3 or 4 teams within the NFC that, for me, will be challenging for the Super Bowl, and that division is weak. So they have a great opportunity. I think Todd Bowles is the right man to take it because he does have head coaching experience as opposed to Byron Leftwich, because that's come out today. Why was he selected ahead of him? But good move, and Brady will be happy in a way because there was still a lot of talk that he wasn't the offensive coordinator. He was meddling in the offense at certain times during his 2 years there, and that did not go down well with Mr. Brady. So, look, all things will play out as the months go on.
Mark, as weak as a pint of Rockshore, I want to bring this in because I meant to say it to our guest, talking about the Bucks, Rob Gronkowski hasn't done anything over the last few, hasn't decided anything. He's almost dancing on TikTok as much as Juju Smith-Schuster. I wanted to get that into the show. What was your thoughts? Because as a man that works late, I was very disappointed this morning or on Thursday morning to see that you hadn't realised and tweeted out the news whenever we were all sleeping. So did you see the news live? Or
I didn't know. I did see it, and I was kind of like, sorry, what? What happened there? I mean, in many respects, you got to applaud the Bucks. It's been handled pretty well. It was kept a lid on. They have the proper succession of power to a really, really talented assistant coach there. Much in the same way the Jets screwed it up in the Parcells to Belichick handover. And many, many franchises usually mess this up entirely. I think that's a credit to the Bucks as an organization, but I think it's more a credit to BA as an individual. He really does respect. You think about his speech when they won the Lombardi. So I did nothing. This is all down to you guys. Even his speech in his press conference claiming that he was not responsible for much. It was all due to the work of his other coaches. That's the humbleness of him and the career he's had, obviously, as an O coordinator for many, many years in the league, retiring, unretiring, given a great shot as head coach at the Bucs, getting Tom Brady in, all of that journey and that story. Great for him. I suppose he's not retiring. He's moving into a role a la Parcells. We'll see how that dynamic will work. But it's also great to see Bowles getting the opportunity. It's not that long ago we were all talking about the lack of diversity in the league, pointing to the Bucs and their assistant head coaches as to what, their OC and DC, why aren't they getting the shots? Why aren't they getting the interviews? And it's like the Bucs have said, well, if no one else is going to take them, we'll set ourselves up for the next while with one of the best coordinators in the league and give him, as Brian and Colin alluded to, that second shot. It makes sense. We will see how it all plays out. Obviously, it looks like you've got a quarterback who may retire again. Maybe he's going to do another Brett Favre and retire and unretire. And Colin, it's not Thomas Edward Brady. It's Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. Of all the names to leave out, the Patrick bit is the most important. That's the Cavan in him.
Michael, you're talking about the breaking news being during the night, which wasn't great for us. I actually did happen to see it as it broke because it was my birthday during the week. And unfortunately, when you hit your mid-40s, you'll find yourself going to the toilet a number of times during the night. So I happened to actually literally pick up the phone as the news broke, and I was going to retweet it out from the show's page, but I went back to sleep.
Brian, happy 50th from every one of us, and I know Dublin got you a good present in Clonus there at the weekend.
If I was 50, I'd be retired. Not there yet.
Fair play to Monaghan there.
Actually, you mentioned League One, Michael. I mean, we haven't given due credit to Dublin for their achievement in relegation, so we should acknowledge that.
Imagine the NFL relegation. So the next topic here, this is great. This is all happening when we're recording, lads. The Rams are getting Bobby Wagner, 5-year, $50 million contract. That can be up. We're up to $65 million. I tell you what, Celtic Tiger in LA. What's going on? Who's balancing the books? We might have to get Nama involved here, boys. It just brings me back to Louis Walsh and Wagner, Bobby Wagner. It's Wagner, Louis. It's going to be Wagner in LA. Colin, can we have some of this magic money tree and go back to 07, 08, or what the hell's going on? How are they affording this?
Well, they've lost some big name players in terms of Von has gone to the Bills, and there's a few other contracts that have expired. The way in which it is all organized and the way in which money moves around, you can make anything happen. We all remember the Chiefs last year. I see some Chiefs fans on Twitter going, how are the Rams doing this? Well, we saw Veach do it last year. We saw the Browns do it for unscrupulous reasons with Sean Watson's contract. If he were to be suspended, that he wouldn't have to take such a hit. So all things can be done when you have a general manager like Les Snead with his capabilities, and that. So to me, as well, the headline, we get to see the headline figure when it initially comes out. The devil is always in the detail with these things. So let's see when we actually get the full details what exactly it looks like. But Bobby Wagner is one of the outstanding linebackers of his generation, a real generational talent. He wants to stay in the division. I can't imagine the Seahawks are delighted with that. So yeah, interested to see what he can do. Again, not only does he bring his playing ability, but he's a leader on defense, and the Rams needed that given some of the guys that they lost.
Yeah, my first thought when I saw the deal was, poor Seattle, because during the week he'd gone and visited the Ravens, and I think Seattle would have been quietly thinking to themselves, great, he's going over there, he's gone to the AFC, away from us, and law of averages will only get to see him once every 4 years. Now they're going to see him twice a year. So it's going to be doubly difficult because the more impact he has for the Rams team, it's negative on the Seattle, and then when he plays against them, the fans are going to be seeing the player that they've let go. And, we're going to see one time this year where Russell Wilson goes back in to Seattle. So there'll be a lot of Seattle fans this year thinking what could have been with those players if they stayed around. But the rebuild is on. Great deal for him, great opportunity. Again, to the point, he's going to be going to a team that's going to be challenging, potentially to go back-to-back Super Bowls. Great opportunity. Again, the contract seems a bit staggering. Bear in mind, and it's been said in our interview this evening, bear in mind that these players at this stage, after being away for 3 or 4 weeks after the craziness of the initial period of free agency, don't tend to get these type of deals. It's usually a 1 year, 2 year deal. But we'll see how much of that actual contract he'll play out, because Von Miller's on something similar.
Yeah, I'm going to say, like the boys said, it's probably not a real deal. It's probably not he's going to see all 5 and Von's not going to see all 6. But look, great stuff for him. Great deal for the Rams, necessarily, obviously, to shore up a linebacker position that really, wasn't a dynamic threat as part of their Super Bowl run. In fact, it was an area that people said could potentially be exploited. And Wagner has been at the top of his game for a long, long time. And look, it's, again, more Madden madness. It's more mad money going around the place. It kind of feels like Christmas going around. But Colin makes the absolute right point. Let's see the actual breakdown. Let's see what the guarantees look like. Guaranteed money, not the top line figure. The agent gets to go with his big headline item, but let's see how the structure plays out. Let's see how much flexibility the Rams have left themselves. We know they have a different path than most of the teams and how they construct their roster setup and their view on the value of high draft picks and the way in which they build their roster construction and their obviously financial planning. So it's worked out very well for them, Super Bowl champions, so you can't criticize. I must say though, Michael, I do love tonight already. Ligue 1, the X Factor from 10 years ago, and National League relegation. For all our fans looking at this from the US, even in the UK, other than the X Factor reference, they're probably going, what the hell is going on tonight? So it's definitely Irish. It's definitely the Irish NFL show tonight.
Good crack and Clonus on Sunday, and Wagner was robbed. Next topic, playoff overtime rules. Here are the new rules. Obviously, the owners had a great bit of crack in Florida this week. We had loads of people, boys, visiting our website from Palm Springs in Florida, genuinely this week. So I don't know if maybe Jerry Jones was checking this out or whatever, but both teams will have the opportunity to possess the ball in overtime in the postseason, not the regular season, the postseason. If the score is tied after each team has possessed the ball, the next score wins. If the team kicking off to start the overtime period scores a safety on the receiving team's initial possession, that team that kicked off is the winner. Colin, people would have said never, 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 but it looks like it's happening now. It's a big moment, and I bet you any money, first wildcard game, boom, it's going to happen.
Well, what it means is that teams are going to want to kick it away first to see what exactly they have to do, I think, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you decide to go for 2 and then all the other team has to do is end up kicking the extra point if you don't get it. So look, these things evolve and change, and we will see how it plays out. I know that the owners, obviously the Mara taunting rule, they were highlighting what a great success the owners felt that was. They were absolutely delighted to see that. I will say it was interesting. Some owners, conspicuous by their relative quiet this week. We didn't hear much from one Jerry Jones, who's usually in front of the microphone, and Stephen Ross. Very, very quiet. The Dolphins have made all sorts of moves, but I didn't see Stephen Ross say anything. So I was a little surprised maybe that, some came to the fore, some didn't. But look, I think for fans, is it going to be perfect? No. But do we want to see both teams get possession of the ball? Yes.
I don't like it. I tell you what, I don't like why it's playoff only. If you're going to do it for the entirety of the season. And I read all the stuff during the week. Oh, that means games are going to go on for longer, and you're going to have a situation where games are overlapping. You're going into the 9 o'clock games for us, and the risk of injuries. And I don't buy that, because they put an extra week on the season, and they're already talking about week 18 now as the next thing in terms of the bargaining agreement. So you can't say one thing and then it's a different story for the other. If they're going to do it for this, if they're going to do it for the course of the season. Don't just do it for playoff football.
Mark, are you leaving us? Because I wanted to get your opinion, not just on overtime, but also one of Brian's favorite players retiring this week, Malcolm Jenkins. if you wanted to maybe.
Oh no, I won't. I'll leave Brian to give you all his love for Malcolm Jenkins, I would say. But on the overtime rules, Brian, they're already different. The overtime rules in playoffs are already different from the regular season. So saying they should all be the same is actually illogical.
How's that?
Your
What am
regular
I
season
missing
ends
then?
in a tie. You can't have a tie in the postseason. So there is
Oh,
no differentiation.
Okay. We're being a bit
Ergo,
pedantic about it now.
there is no reason why the owners are wrong to have a different approach. I'll be frank, I don't like it for a slightly different reason. I actually love the drama of the Bills-Chiefs game. I love the drama of the Patriots-Chiefs game a few years previously. I actually like the way it ends that way. Now game theory, a little bit of analysis comes into it, and you're going to have people moaning in due course. You're going to have this, oh, it's too much like college football. Oh, this team went for it on 2 and they strategically shouldn't have done this. I mean, yes, you can say there's more planning, but at the end of the day, when it gets to that heartbreak and that importance, I think the drama of it finishing in one great play or one dramatic play is more relevant, and we've already tweaked it to allow people to at least possess the ball once. It's I don't know, it's just too much. I mean, scoring a touchdown to win the game, you should. Like, frankly, you should be able to walk off and enjoy that. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of whether it's the Minnesota Miracle, whether it's which I know was in regular time, but how you win the game, how you close it out. That's there's an elegance to it all.
Can I make another point on this, right? So they're saying, they said, say for example, you're playing week 5, week 6, right? And the game shouldn't be going to an overtime with the new rule because the longer the game goes on, and then obviously these players have played for another 11, 12 weeks of the season. But then in the playoffs, they're coming off playing 17 weeks in the season, and whoever wins has to play the following Saturday on playoff football. So it just doesn't wash. It's either it should be one rule, do it for the course of the season. End of.
I think they should play an hour 15 minutes. I think go full NBA, what they do. Do what the GA do, play extra time, do what soccer does, play extra time. Look, I love the way, though, that we're making decisions. People talk about different controversial opinions, like overtime, splitting counties in 2, different things in sport. And it's good that we've agreed on something and we can at least talk about it. Mark, he's staying on for 5 minutes. Yeah? He's gone. He's gone. Okay, Mark. Okay.
Gotta love you and leave you, gents. Gotta love you and leave you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Take it easy, man, guys.
Keep her lit. AOB, while we're at it, boys, before we get our guest on, I'm going to start off, if you don't mind. Owners' meetings this week. There's 2 things I want to talk about. The first one is for some reason, the Denver Broncos are throwing the idea of going to London out on social media from their GM, their head coach, the guy who technically owns the team or is in charge of team affairs at the minute. I don't know why they're doing that. It's very, very random. It's just very, very strange if they're going to play in London or not. And I can see why they would do it. I can see why NFL UK would want that to happen, but over like New York, Brian, I don't know. Maybe you want to weigh in this in a second. And obviously Malcolm Jenkins, to the Saints and Eagles fans that are watching or listening to this show, retires this season after a 13-year career in the NFL. And I'm loving, boys, how these lads are now choosing to retire like on their own podcast or on a video where they have their own say and they're not like giving it to Schefter to tweet out. So that's my AOB. It's been good crack. I'll let you go next, Colin.
Well, maybe Brian should go, or maybe we'll come back to the London thing in a minute. What I would say, my AOB is in a week where we saw one John McLean retire, Bruce Willis taking a step back from public life because of health concerns. Another John McLean, the NFL's long-standing reporter down in Houston, 47 years reporting on Houston football, a very famous face, I think, across the league. He officially retired this week. And we were talking earlier about keeping things under wraps and then it just breaking. He announced this morning, or on Thursday morning, we're recording this on Thursday. He announced on Thursday that today was his last day. What a way to go out. And he's broken kind of all the big stories he's been part of, the craziness that has gone on in Houston, obviously the team leaving, the team coming back, and the most in a league that features bizarre ownership situations, my own team included in that. The Houston Texans, rival only the Washington Commanders for the shenanigans that we have seen in the front office. He has had a wonderful and varied career, and wish him well in his retirement.
I think it's really good news that the Broncos are participating in this Please Send Me to London. And I'm not being trying to be funny, because like the Giants are lobbying to go. They're obviously not being as outspoken as the Broncos have been in terms of what they put out there in social media and interviews. And the Cowboys, by all accounts, are in the same position. They're also lobbying to go over there because they're both playing the Jags, and obviously the Giants play the Packers as well. But I think it's a positive for us, for fans this side of the world, because years ago when the games initiated, the first game in London in 2008, 2007, 2007-8 season, and then from there on, there was teams that were reluctant to go and they were picked to go. Now what we're seeing is teams are putting themselves forward, and the fact that the Packers are coming finally after so many years. So I actually think this is a good thing, and whoever they pick, we know we're in for a great game. So yes, from a selfish point of view, I hope to see my own team. Yours are the same for the Broncos, but as a fan, I don't think we can argue and to see the teams being so outspoken this week, coming out and saying they want to be over here playing games. I think can only benefit everybody in the long run.
Big shout out, of course, to our amigo Ruben from Zona Gigantes for that scoop on the Giants. I know if it's the Giants or the Broncos, we'll try and do a show. Brian can wear his big blue hat or his big orange hat, depending on the. I'm just putting pressure on everyone now, lads. Good crack. Obviously,
half and half, Michael.
Half and half. Yeah, why not? Obviously, we're presented by Trust Gaming, Mini Arcade Systems, and also the Erlingus College Football Classic tickets go on sale. Single game tickets go on sale for that Nebraska Northwestern game on April the 29th, like literally the morning after the draft. We don't know if it's going to be a pre-sale or not. We're going to find out if it's a second pre-sale. collegefootballireland.com for all the information. We'll be there. Avec Bell's on, so we'll see you for the kickoff of the new football season in August in Dublin, Ireland. Colin, do you want to get our guest on? Who is coming on this week as we enter draft month?
Yeah, well, fitting, I suppose, as we enter draft month and as we come off the back of free agency, and a lot of fans will be wanting to get to know players they've acquired either through free agency or traded for. We've got a guy who does fantastic film breakdowns. He has been doing this for years. He has built up a formidable reputation, well deserved in terms of what he does. We are delighted to welcome the creator, analyst, host, and the film room from YouTube, Brett Coleman, to the Irish NFL Show.
on the Irish NFL Show. As we enter draft month in April, we're delighted to welcome in the creator, analyst, and host of the Film Room, Brett Coleman. Brett, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the Irish NFL Show for the first time.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy I could make it.
Brett, have you ever had the pleasure of coming to the Emerald Isle or even a game in London or anything?
I've been to London 3 times, and I've always wanted to go on kind of an Irish whiskey tour. So, kind of making my way around the island and going to different distilleries. I think I know this is not kosher in Ireland, but I've got whiskey from both sides of the aisle over in my bar over there. So I don't know if they'll allow me to go to Bushmills and Jameson on the same trip, but hopefully I can.
There's no hassle at all with that. You can equal opportunities on this show, Brett. But I suppose one thing that kind of broke earlier today, as we record this, but is the news around BA, the Bucks, and obviously Todd Bowles. And you are somebody who's been a big admirer of Todd Bowles and his work for quite a while. Can you talk to us, I suppose, a little bit about what you feel he's going to bring as a head coach, and in terms of his defensive schemes and like getting this opportunity? It's not with the Jets, it's with the Buccaneers, and Tom Brady is back.
Yeah, I really respected that Arians did that because, and he made a good point of, hey, I'm going to retire next year anyway. Oh, sorry, my cat's trying to play with the laptop here. He's like, oh, I'm gonna retire anyway. I might as well give Todd, a stable, functioning team that might be able to make a Super Bowl run here, rather than just leaving him with, scraps after, Tom Brady potentially retires again, and, all these other veterans that we just pay a lot of money. Like, the roster is not going to look the same in a year from now. So he wants to show the league that Todd Bowles can really coach, and that what he can do when he has a good, veteran-led, talented roster, because he didn't really have that with the Jets. So I think he wanted to show what Todd could do with a fully prepared roster. And I really respect Arians for that, because he didn't have anything left to prove. He won a ring. He coached for many years in the league, might end up going to the Hall of Fame. He had nothing left to prove. And so he wanted to hand it off to his protege that's younger, that, has earned another shot in the league to be a head coach. And that's just kind of who Arians is. He always looks out for his people. And he did right by Todd Bowles there.
Brett, Bobby Wagner has taken his time in terms of picking his next team since he was released from the Seahawks. And usually when that comes to play, it's only a 1 year or a 2 year deal. Are you surprised, judging the news today, the enormity of that deal? 5 years, 50 million. It's significant. Deal.
I would be very surprised if he plays all 5 years on that. Just like I don't think there's any shot that Von Miller plays 6 years in Buffalo. I just think they structured the cap hit in a way where they could just kind of keep pushing it off, because quite frankly, they expect the cap to go way up as the new TV deal starts paying out. And the Rams' salaries, how they're kind of structured right now, like I don't think they're really going to get hurt by this, because by the time they really have to pay a lot of money, in terms of cap hit, the guarantees are going to be. It's a very maneuverable deal for them in that way, So I don't think it's really going to do a lot of damage. And if anything, I think it was a good deal for Bobby just to kind of get, one more deal at the end of his career. And it was a good deal for the Rams, because people keep saying like, how can they afford all this? It's like, well, their cap hits are arranged in such a way where they're never all hitting at the same time. So they actually are pretty good in terms of where their money situation is.
Brett, I love you bringing up BA. His press conference departing was typical BA territory with, I think the exact expression was, I didn't do shit. I just sat back and watched these guys do all the work, which was typically self-effacing, a bit like obviously when he picked up the Lombardi trophy a couple of years ago. And I love the comment you made, actually, I saw on Twitter earlier, about he retired, unretired, joined the Bucks, got Tom Brady to join, won a Super Bowl, and then hands over and is going immediately into the Hall of Fame of the Bucks this autumn. The Glazers have already announced. Like, that's pretty good for a 4-year span. But
Yeah.
I'm fascinated on your thoughts about some of the constructs. You mentioned like Wagner and obviously Von Miller. They're probably a little bit fake deals. We've seen a lot of that in recent times with the concept of avoidable years. And there are some deals still, even with the TV contracts, that don't make sense to me. I mean, how and what the Washington Commanders are doing at quarterback, taking on Carson Wentz's contract, is a big question for me generally. I have joked that the Colts said, "Oh, we'll have to give them 2 the mid-round picks," and then suddenly went, "Oh, they're going to give us the picks," which is a bit strange. But what has stood out for you so far? We're playing Madden this offseason. It's been bizarre, crazy, all kinds of wonderful as fans in many respects. But what has stood out for you as either the best or the absolute worst deal and structure so far, given the production or the player they're picking up?
I will say I'm not a fan of everything the Browns did this offseason, but trading for Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick. And at the time, everybody's like, Amari, $20 million. I don't know about that. And then all of a sudden, Christian Kirk is signing for that deal, which then completely shifted the wide receiver market. And now the top of the wide receiver market is like 27 to, by the time next year's group signs, it's going to be 30 million. So that 20 million for Amari Cooper ain't going to look too bad, especially when all it cost him was a 5th-round pick. So that, I think, was a very prescient move. And just kind of the general theme of free agency of, you're starting to see guys go for more like 3-year deals, but with super high guarantees so that they can then get back on the market as soon as humanly possible and cash in again. It used to be, if you go into the league when you're 22 and then, when you're 26, you sign another extension that gets you all the way till you're 30 and 31. Now it's okay, 22, you sign another extension when you're 25, 26 for 3 years to get you back on the market when you're 28, 29, because you're still in the middle of the prime. You cash out again and have the guarantees run out when you're like 31, 32, and then you go to take that, that last veteran deal like what Bobby Wagner just did. So it's kind of interesting how, that second contract is getting shorter, but with higher guarantees, which I think it's favorable to both sides in a way, because, the players get back on the market. It's kind of gambling on themselves. And it's also favorable for the teams because in a way they can kind of get out of deals that don't work as well a little bit quicker. Now it's like every deal is either in reality, every deal is either 2 years or 3 years when you look at the guarantees, and the extra years are usually kind of meaningless.
Brett, March had everything. Forget about St. Peter's, the lads, March Madness with the college basketball for the NFL. As Mark said, it was insane, not just players, but commentators moving, stadiums happening. And one thing that's not just been in the talks this week is obviously Buffalo, but talk within Kansas about potentially the Chiefs moving out of Arrowhead. I've seen you've talked about it a bit this week. Do you think that's realistic, or do you think that's going to happen? If you look at the other stadia in the AFC West, obviously with SoFi and Allegiant, talk with Denver trying to maybe do something there as well. Do you think the Chiefs could maybe do that in the future, or do you think it's all just maybe smoke at the minute?
I honestly don't know, because at this point I'll believe anything. I don't think that they should leave Arrowhead. I would rather, if the Hunt family is just looking for public funds to refurbish Arrowhead, maybe this is their leverage for it. But even, let's just pretend they're building a new stadium. I don't think they're leaving Missouri. I think that they're leveraging Kansas because they want the Missouri side of the border to give them a better deal in terms of, they already have a site that they can build on pretty easily. That much I know. I get the sense it's a leverage play. It would be very weird for them to go to the Kansas side of the border. I know they have a fan base in Kansas, but there's a lot less people there. I'll just say that. There's a lot less people. So I would imagine most likely scenario is they're staying in Arrowhead and they're just trying to leverage the city to give them a whole bunch of money for refurbishments. Second most likely scenario is they just build another stadium in the Missouri side of Kansas City. And then maybe if somehow Kansas gives them the state of Kansas gives them a crazy deal to move to that side of the border, maybe it works, but I would be surprised.
Yeah, we shall wait and see. It's always intriguing, and when money is involved, who knows? But one thing I suppose I've always been impressed from you is your willingness to put your hands up and admit mistakes, right? Because we all make them, we all get it wrong. That transition from college to the NFL, no one knows how it's going to go. And for our viewers, Brett did an amazing video about a month ago where you talked about the QBs transitioning from college into the league and how different that is, how you assess them and how that has changed. And I suppose drawing on that, as we are in April, or when this is being broadcast, looking at this year's QB class, and we all know the talk about it, the fact that we've maybe seen so many teams trade for QBs maybe says what teams are thinking. But what's your thoughts on it, Brett, in terms of who's your standout? Is there somebody that you'd be willing to take a shot on? And is there somebody that people are talking about that you think, no, there's that guy, I just, at this moment in time, with the caveat that we can all be wrong, I don't think they'll really do it in the NFL?
There are only two quarterbacks in this class that I feel very confident in that they're going to go in the first round, and only one that I feel very confident they're going to go in the top 10. The one is Malik Willis. I think he's going to go number 2 overall to Detroit because he's got crazy physical tools. And these days, if you're a coachable kid with physical tools, you're going to go high. And I think, Detroit's a unique situation where, they have a good offensive line. I think they have a stable coaching staff. They have a veteran quarterback in front of him that he can sit behind for a year and learn, because there's a lot of mistakes that kind of need to be ironed out from his game before he even steps foot on an NFL field. So that's a good situation for him. I would be all in favor of him going number 2 to Detroit. The other quarterback that I think could go in the first round that I feel somewhat confident that he'll go in the first round is Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. Very intriguing profile. Does not have the same physical gifts of Malik Willis, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have tools. They're just not of the freak arm nature of Malik Willis. And he is mobile. He's got some size to him. He's 6'3", about 215. So, not the biggest guy in the world, but still, by comparison to a lot of the quarterbacks coming out these days, still bigger than many of them. Howell is intriguing to me from North Carolina. He's got a good deep ball, but he's not necessarily a drive thrower. So if he's trying to make those throws like from the far hash, that's going to be more about timing and anticipation for him than just raw, piss missile arm strength, how I like to call it. Pickett is fine. I think he could go in the first round. But I also see him as basically like Andy Dalton. So it's like, if you're cool with Andy Dalton and you think that you have a good enough roster where you're like, man, if we had like young Andy Dalton from like 2015, 2016, where, the Bengals made a couple really good playoff runs, it's like, if you think your roster around him is good enough, you can take Kenny Pickett and probably feel okay about it. But as soon as you have to pay Kenny Pickett, by the time his second contract is coming up and it's like $45 million a year, it's like, are you going to feel awesome about that? Probably not. So it's like, he's fine. But I think when you look at all these young quarterbacks out there where it's like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, like all these crazy athletes where you see what they can do that very few other human beings can do, you got to get through them in the playoffs if you're going to go anywhere anyway. So you might as well go get somebody like a Malik Willis that can at least match crazy tools for crazy tools. And then you just gotta hope you hit and coach them up right.
Brett, everybody's been talking about the AFC West and how aggressive the team's been, but on the other side of the coast, the AFC East, the Dolphins, very aggressive this offseason. They've done a good job on the offensive line, the Tyreek Hill trade, but this year for Tua, it has to be make or break, I guess, because, and then what concerns me, if they do have a middle-of-the-road season, where does that leave them? Because then obviously the good quarterbacks in the draft will go early next year, and they're kind of back in a catch-22 situation.
if they have a middle of the road season, all of a sudden they're going to be the same place the Broncos were this year, is they're trying to trade for a talented but disgruntled veteran. The same thing the Rams did. It's like, we have the roster, but we don't necessarily have the level of quarterback we need to make the most use of it. The Bucs a couple years before that have the roster. We don't necessarily have the quarterback that can really get us over the hump. Tampa got Brady, LA got Stafford, Broncos trying to do it with Wilson this year. If Tua does not take that next step, I could very easily see them, go target a quarterback somewhere else and just say, we'll give up whatever we need to, which now they're kind of running a little bit lower on picks because they gave up
Tyreek Hill.
for Tyreek Hill. But, this is the exact reason why they keep getting linked to people like Deshaun Watson. They keep getting linked to people like Tom Brady, is because there's kind of two ways to build a team these days. Either you hit on a young quarterback and you take advantage of the fact that they're dirt cheap so you can go buy the rest of the roster, or you build the rest of the roster first and then go trade for a veteran quarterback. That's kind of the only two ways you're going to win a ring these days. So Tua has to take that next step. And if he doesn't take that next step, because the roster is ready to go, they're going to replace him. I don't care that he's on a first round rookie deal and they spent a top 10 pick on him. Like, that doesn't matter anymore. If he doesn't take the step with this roster, they are going to replace him somehow.
Yeah, Miami's still making light of that Laramie Tunsil deal back in the day that still keeps on giving and giving, eventually cashing in all the chips. But I just want to say as well, as Colin called out, I applaud you on, not very many people come out and say, hey, I was wrong on that. In fact, on this show, Michael's got a very different approach. He's so wrong so often, he just shouts about the times he's right. It's kind of another way of going about things. But I just want to dwell on the NFC South again for a second. We started there with the Bucs and everything. But if you look at the other teams in that division this year, it's such a flux. I mean, it always feels like the NFC North in terms of there's one dominant player and three make weights in many respects. And I know Vikings fans will hate me for saying that, but they've been there. They just haven't realized their talent over the last while, obviously clearing house at coach and GM this season. But in the NFC South, you've got Atlanta with the unbelievable $40.5 million cap hit. The Panthers, who still don't, they've Sam Darnold, but they don't really have a quarterback. And they obviously have Matt Rule trying to figure out what he's supposed to do outside of college. And the Saints, who, they've got Jameis Winston back, but they don't have Sean Payton this year. I don't want to say it feels rather bleak there, a bit like it does in the NFC North, a bit like it did in the NFC East with the Patriots, and their domination over the years. Am I being too harsh, or is there hope at the end of the tunnel for those franchises?
I don't really have any hope for Atlanta this year at all. I think the Falcons are going to be in the running for first overall pick. I'd be kind of surprised if they're not. The Panthers are an interesting case because there's a lot of talent on the roster, but they just can't get the quarterback position right, which is obviously really important. The Saints, I happen to like, Jameis as a quarterback. Again, I don't think he's like a top 15 quarterback, but I certainly don't think he's a bottom 7 to 8 quarterback either. I think he's kind of like smack dab in the middle, which for a roster of their quality should be enough to get plenty of wins, especially in a relatively weak NFC. So they'll probably be a playoff team, but I struggle to think that they're going to get through the Rams and get through the Packers, or really get through anybody in the NFC West, if we're being honest. But that being said, their defense is good enough, and I think their overall talent on the roster should be good enough to probably split with Tampa, because Tampa has struggled with the Saints for the last few years. So I do project them to be a wild card team, and probably an annoying one at that for Tampa if they have to play them a third time in the playoffs. But I think other than the Bucs, I don't really see any actual Super Bowl contenders in that group.
I'm going to ignore Mark's comments for a while anyway. Brett, last round of questions here. It's been great having you on, man. I seen this week, obviously, the NFL owners' meeting's taking place in Florida, and I can't find the tweet anymore, but I've definitely read this, or else I'm going crazy. Christmas Day falling on a Sunday this year, talk of additional games, maybe 2 or 3 games on Christmas Day. Rumors, obviously, until confirmed in the first week in May. If you had to pick a Christmas Day game, just straight up from looking at the current strength of rosters in the NFL, late game, who would it be?
Ooh, I kind of like the idea of an AFC West game just because they're all good. My wild card pick is going to be like Russell Wilson's return to Seattle, because the Broncos visit the Seahawks this year, so that could be a fun one. Although maybe slightly depressing because the Seahawks aren't going to be very good. If they want like an actual good competitive game, it'll probably be AFC West. I think like let's see, what's like a you know what? Raiders Chiefs. Yeah, Raiders Chiefs sounds right to me. That sounds like a Christmas game.
Yeah, maybe a kind of a Die Hard type, in the way that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, Raiders Chiefs maybe a Christmas matchup. Kind of piggybacking on what you just said there in relation to the Seahawks. Pete Carroll is 70, and are you surprised that they decided to move on from Russell Wilson with a 70-year-old head coach? As you said, Bobby's gone. There's a lot of rebuilding there to do that for a guy who is literally a geriatric.
Yeah, I knew that they had to move on from one of them. I was a little bit surprised that they moved on from Russ instead of Pete, because I definitely got the vibe that it was like it's him or me type situation. But maybe they just felt like they weren't going to win anyway. Looking at some of the top end of the NFC, maybe they felt like the roster just wasn't there. And so they wanted to get what they could out of Russ and, use those assets to start to rebuild the team and, hope they hit lightning in a bottle again and get another quarterback like they lucked out with Russ. But what I find fascinating about it is, okay, let's just say they acknowledge the roster wasn't in a good spot and that they weren't going to be competitive. Isn't that Pete and John Schneider's fault in the first place? And so if anything, if you're going to trade Russ, you might as well just blow up the whole damn building and get new people in there, because you're getting all these picks from Russell Wilson and you're giving them to the people that messed up the roster in the first place. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit weird to me that it's like, oh, well, surely they'll get it right this time. And it's like, why would you think that? Like, they haven't been good at drafting for a long time.
Brett, we've spoken about quarterbacks being traded because the level of quarterback coming out in this draft isn't what we've seen in the past. Is that something similar with wide receivers? I know Drake London and Garrett Wilson are the main two, but we've seen big deals for wide receivers this offseason. The Jets are being continuously linked with giving away the 10th pick for DK Metcalf, and even yesterday, AJ Brown. Is the class of wide receiver good enough for the likes of the Jets at the 10th pick?
See, it's interesting because I think what's kind of throwing a wrench into things is that 2 of the top 4 receivers, I would say, are coming off major injuries. You got Drake London coming off a broken ankle, and he's going to have his combine medical recheck pretty soon here. And then, Jameson Williams is coming off a torn ACL, and the report came out today that he's hoping he'll be ready for training camp. So it's tough because if all these guys were healthy, I do think it would be a good receiver class. Wouldn't be like the best out of the last 3, but in terms of like just looking at the position group in a vacuum, I think there's a lot of good guys in this class. Just some of the best ones happen to be coming off pretty substantial injuries. So I think that's probably why you're seeing a lot of smoke for the Jets, kind of using that 10th pick on DK Metcalf and getting more of a sure thing, because if they use it on Jameson Williams, they don't even think they're going to be able to work with him the entire summer and, get him on the field and building chemistry with Zach Wilson, which was the problem they had with Denzel Mims, is that he was hurt pretty much his entire rookie offseason and he's never really got going. And so I don't think they want to deal with drafting a hurt player. So you might as well just take that top 10 pick. And while there's still a fire sale going on in Seattle, go get somebody who's kind of a proven commodity.
There's a lot of people at the back end of the draft who feel that when Williams comes back from the injury, in the long term, he's the best wide receiver and they will get the best player. It's just a case of being patient with the injury.
Yeah, and so like if Jameson's going to go high or go in the first round, I think it's going to be to a team that doesn't need him to be their number one immediately. You know, a team that has time for him to literally not be ready to play until September, you know, or even just ready to step on the field till September. So I would look at, God, who's a team that actually fits that bill?
The Chiefs have been linked.
And, you know, when the Chiefs had Tyreek, I would have said, like, yeah, you could take Jameson Williams and you know, he'll be the number 2 and they can survive with Tyreek and Kelsey until like October. But now without Tyreek there, it's like, yeah, Jameson Williams would be the number 1. But it's like you're going to go into a season with a rookie number 1 receiver that you're not even going to get to work with all summer. Like, that's risky business right there. So it's tough. I'm going to be fascinated to see how high he goes because, like you said, on paper, if he was healthy, yeah, he'd probably be the top receiver in this draft. But it's a tall order to ask the Packers with no number 1 or the Chiefs with no number 1 to make this injured 21-year-old with 1 year of good experience to be a number 1 receiver in the NFL from the get-go. That's pretty tough.
Brett, they've got Juju. They'll be fine with Juju.
Oh, Jesus.
I know. I have to warn you, Seahawks fans generally have pitchforks. So just for the interest of balance, I will flag, of course, Schneider and Carroll did develop the Legion of Boom, converted a 5th rounder with Richard Sherman, converted wide receiver and stuff. So they did do some good, albeit not for the last 5 years on any drafts, which is why Russell Wilson has only won, or the Seahawks have only won 1 playoff game in the last 5 years. So, you know, I've just got to give a bit of balance because they come for us. I mean, you know, they come with their humps and their, you know, ailments, but pitchforks, dangerous crew.
I was born and bred in the salt, believe me.
But Brett, I mean, you do the, you know, some amazing breakdowns and some amazing analysis on film, on the film room in relation to each, you know, facet of the game. And nothing stands out more than for the average fan than when you're watching a game, it's one thing. When you look at the coach's film, maybe on Game Pass afterwards, and you can see the detail and the level of detail, especially on offensive line play. Like everyone can see when a team gives up a sack. They sometimes don't see the nuance of how the defense gained it or how obviously the offensive line was performing and blocking and holes maybe that a running backs missed during the game and those nuances. But if there was one narrative in the postseason last year, it was, oh my dear God, the Cincinnati Bengals are trying to get Joe Burrow killed. Yeah. And yet, so far this offseason, no team has done probably more. And bear in mind, they are the AFC champions still, ladies and gents. No team has done more to try to improve their offensive line. Based on your analysis during that postseason, the moves they've made, some of the way they're trying to shift around, how, you know, do you see that do you think they've taken the right steps? Do you think they're bringing in the right players? Or is there something more endemic or systematic there that's a problem?
I think it is the exact same thing that Kansas City did this time last year, where, you know, you get to the Super Bowl, they sustained some offensive line injuries, but they had zero depth. Patrick Mahomes was getting slaughtered in the Super Bowl against a very good front from Tampa, and they immediately said, no more. You know, we have this young quarterback in Patrick Mahomes who has taken a couple significant injuries, you know, dislocated kneecap, all that kind of stuff, and he's running for his life. We can't do this anymore. We invested literally $500 million into this guy. He needs to be protected at all costs. And so they did that. They replaced literally their whole offensive line and made another almost Super Bowl run. And Cincinnati's thinking the same thing of, hey, we have this young, brilliant quarterback who has carried this franchise on his back for the last 2 years, you know, got us knocking on the door of holding up a Lombardi trophy with nothing at offensive line. Terrible. What can he do when he's actually protected? And they're going to end up investing probably $500 million in him as well, just like the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. So for the first time I've ever seen in my lifetime, the Bengals are actually spending money because they realize what they have in Joe Burrow. He is a franchise changer. They never really spent like this for Andy Dalton. They never really spent like this for Carson Palmer. Like, it's blank check time over there. They're building a new training facility, an indoor training facility. They're expanding the front office. Like, they're doing stuff that they've never done before because they know what Joe Burrow can do for them. And they know that he can bring a championship legacy to a franchise that historically has not had one. So I think it's a phenomenal sea change for them. I'm happy to see it being done. And I think that, the arrow is only pointing up for the Bengals from here on out.
Looking forward to seeing it this season. Brett, look, for anyone watching or listening to this show, obviously would encourage everyone to check out Brett's content on Twitter, but also Brett Coleman's channel on YouTube and your Patreon as well, Brett, that I know you're massively into, and the fantastic analysis you're doing. And we want to thank you for coming on. I have both Jamison and Bushmills here, and you're more than welcome over here anytime, and hopefully chat to you again soon, Brett.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.